So many of us are afraid to speak, whether it's in front of the camera, during a presentation, or speaking in a meeting, for example. In fact, this fear of speaking seems to be so common that we think it's just normal. We fight against it, we push through the experience, and we're relieved when it's over. Our guest today is Linda Ugelow. Linda is a speaking and empowerment coach and author of Delight in the Limelight. And she's going to share how we can transform our speaking anxiety into confident self-expression. Linda, thank you so much for joining us. As we said just before we hit record, the universe has our back. We had to reschedule, but it turned out that we had our time zones wrong. So here we are, perfect timing. It's great to
Oh
have you
no.
here. Thanks so much
It's
for
so
joining
nice.
us.
It's so cool that we can connect from opposite parts of the globe.
I know. I know. It's amazing. Yeah, we're very, very fortunate. And you're dialing in from Boston, I
From
believe?
Boston, Massachusetts. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, cool.
US.
Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be
So I
here.
was in the UK. We scheduled our call before Christmas, and I was in the UK, and I read the majority of your book when I was on the plane on the way home. So yeah, it filled up many great hours, which would have been otherwise spent mindlessly watching crap on telly. So thank you for that. And just, yeah, so many insights. I feel like this is a real theme at the moment on the podcast where we're talking about our internal world and how what's going on in our internal world can really impact how we express ourselves externally. And although um, we have our target audience or the people we're speaking to, which helps us to kind of get our message out to the right people. Um, so many of these stories, these things that are happening, these themes are related to our lives in general. So, you might be a public speaker and someone might say, well, this podcast isn't for me. But in fact, you could be just speaking in your family and wanting to
Absolutely.
find your self-expression.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up because speaking is our human design. We're born to speak. Children delight in it. They delight in making sounds, making words, putting sentences together. By the time they're 3 years old, you can't get them to stop. And yet, as you said in your introduction, somewhere between then and now, we have had a different kind of programming. We've had, programming of, parents trying to get us to be quiet or to be quiet in school and to be compliant and good kids and easy to handle. And inadvertently, I mean, those are just a few of the message. Inadvertently, we have experiences that erode our sense of free self-expression that we had as little kids. Everything that we delight in as we look at little kids and we say, oh my God, I wish I could be unself-conscious like that. It's because of all the programming that we've had that's taken it away or covered it up.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I've really like to dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah,
Um,
let's do that.
yeah, I've got two children, and I feel like sometimes they're the teachers. So I started late in life when it came to motherhood. I didn't have my first one till I was 40, and the second one at nearly 42. But I feel like they came along at the right time to kind of because you do see that, and they become your greatest teachers when it comes to like that innocence and perfection that's in childhood. That and I guess you start to witness also where your own personal experiences were and trying not to pass that on where those lines
Yes,
cross.
absolutely. So I also had my daughter at 40
Uh-huh.
and and she has become a singer who's so comfortable on stage. And I look at her and I say, that's what it looks like when somebody has not been shut down.
Mm, yeah,
That's what it looks like when someone has been nurtured, not over nurtured, not pushed, but just allowed to grow into themselves.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And so would you say that Were you coaching people in this particular modality when you had your daughter? So you were really very
No, no,
conscious of
no,
that?
no.
Okay.
Not at all. I didn't get over my fear of speaking until I was 60 years old,
Oh, wow. And
which
how old are
is
you now?
almost 10 years ago. I'll be 70 this year.
Oh, wow. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's inappropriate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You look wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you,
you.
I
I
wouldn't put you a
I
day over
feel that
60.
I feel that it's not unrelated
Right. Okay. Okay.
because I think that the more we allow ourselves to be ourselves and to express ourselves, the more it's who said something like we don't stop playing when we get old. We get old because we stop playing.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's so much focus on getting all of the things done when we're like pre midlife, let's say, that we think that it's over, don't we? Or we can think that it's over. I made it to 50 last year. And I've been saying to people now, that first part is like the warm up
Mm-hmm.
for what's to
Mm-hmm.
come. And it's not over till it's over. Like every moment is yeah, super
Exactly. And even
important.
at age 60, you can have an epiphany that totally changes your life, like it
Yeah.
did for me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit of the backstory of how this all came about? Would you be open to doing that?
Yes, of course. Of course. So I was somebody who was very uncomfortable speaking for all those decades. I did the thing of avoiding it as much as I could, let other people stand in the front. I mean, it's so hard to imagine. I mean, you see me now and I understand you. You look at me and you say, oh, she's a complete natural. No, nothing could be further from the truth. I did that whole avoidance piece. And then something happened in my life where I was pushed to speak. And so then I moved into another stage that a lot of people might be able to relate to, which you talked about in the introduction, is you just assume that everybody has this anxiety. And so you push through it, you ignore it, you try to manage it. And that's what I did for many years as well, until I became an online coach. Suddenly, I needed to get visible. If people don't know you exist, you can't help them. So I took a whole bunch of video courses, unlisted, of course. Nobody saw them.
Uh-huh.
And then my video mentor said, there's this amazing new app. You've got to get on, Linda. Everybody, everyone told her students, got to get on Periscope. Periscope was the first live streaming app. Now, of course, live streaming now is common, but then it was completely novel, new technology. And all the marketing gurus said, you got to get on daily to build your following. So I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be, here I am at 60, I'm coming late at this late to life. I'm going to be an early adopter. But they didn't tell me how terrifying it was. And I'm talking about like heart pounding, disassociating from my body, hyperventilating. And at the end of the week, I reached out to my video mentor and I said, do you feel scared like I feel scared? And she said, oh, Linda, you'll be fine. It takes about 10 weeks or, 75 days to adjust. And I'm thinking, 75 days? That's not going to work. So I went online and I Googled how to get over my nerves and I followed all these things like pretend your fear is excitement or don't think of yourself, think of your audience or feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's what I decided I'm going to do. I'm going to feel the fear and do it anyway. And every day I tried new things, meditation, deep breathing, power poses, affirmations, kicks and punches, you name it. I tried it. And the truth is, it got me on live stream every single day. And I assumed in a few weeks, I'll be fine. So I got to day 75, didn't even think that it was day 75, but the weeks went by. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, why is my heart still pounding like a racehorse? And I realized that all this experience did not bring me to a place of confidence. Doing it every day, exposure therapy didn't bring me to a place of confidence. that all I was doing really was managing my fear, but the fear was there waiting for me every single day. I think I probably got better at live streaming, but I didn't feel better. And what you're talking about is how can we feel better in our lives? That's what I wanted. I didn't want to have fear to have to manage every day. I just didn't want to have to manage it. I wanted to be able to plan my live stream, get on, get off, and move on.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, what can I do? And I actually have a background in expressive arts therapy and a psychology background and a ton of self improvement stuff. So I made a list of all the things that I knew that, how can I get rid of this? If I go through every single one, I'm sure it'll be gone. And then I said to myself, before I get rid of it, what is it? What is this fear? So I closed my eyes to connect with it and I asked if the fear could talk, what would it say? And what came back was, you're going to be attacked.
Oh,
Suddenly, I have a picture in my mind of my sisters attacking me whenever mom put me in the center of attention, saying, Linda's such a good girl. Why can't you naughty ones be more like Linda? Well, of course they hated that. She'd walk out of the room and they'd charge, kick me in the shins, and say, shut up, stupid. And then it hit me. Duh. Of course, I don't feel comfortable being the center of attention because I learned it was dangerous. And not only that, but if I shone, whatever, they wouldn't love me. They wouldn't love me. And then I was thinking, this is weird. Is this true? Is this real? Because that was so long ago and we're good friends now. How could that possibly be an issue? But when I checked in with myself and I said, am I still afraid that if I succeeded, if I shine too brightly, that they won't like me? And I could feel the answer was yes. I still feel that way. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, what if the fear of speaking has nothing to do with, who's going to watch us on video, but it has everything to do with how we were made to feel in the past. The times we were led to feel it wasn't safe. And I discovered it wasn't just my sisters, but the times I was bullied, the times that I was rejected, when I was embarrassed in class because I didn't have the right answer, when I was pressured to perform before I was ready and I was mortified. It could be any number of things. But I realized this is the key that nobody is talking about online. If you Google how to get over the fear of speaking, you'll come up with all the things I just mentioned. But you won't because somehow my SEO isn't good enough yet for me to show up on the front page. You won't find how to actually get over your fear. And this is the first step, is to reveal the root causes. And then it's really not enough to know what happened. You got to do something with it. You've got to change your relationship with it because we ascribe meaning to the things that happen to us. Oh, those people didn't want to talk to me. I must not be interested. People don't want to hear what I have to say. That is going to impact your speaking confidence. Oh, I was punished and hit. It's not safe for me to be seen. That is going to impact your speaking confidence.
wow. So much of that resonates for me, and that is it's kind of interesting, isn't it? I think we're realizing more and more as humans that those things that happen to us when we're in our youth or childhood do have they're imprinted in us, and that we carry them with us even if we don't realize. And that's something that I've been becoming more aware of in my own life over the last few years. And social media has had a big part of it as well. It
Mm-hmm.
was that, like, if I post online, yeah, it feels dangerous. What are people, and there was this whole like story of what are people going to think about me? What if they don't like me? All of those things. And I had experiences in my teens when I was bullied. So it's not safe to be seen. So all of that really resonates for me. Um, and I think it's a really good indicator when you don't feel that anymore, when you can go on to, talk in public or on social media. And it's like, I'm just talking on social media and I'm having a good time. There's not that
Mhm.
entire backstory going on.
That's right. You're not dragging it around with you.
Yeah. And and there's, yeah, there's something to be said for kind of letting go of the past. But I feel like there's also like this process that has to happen where we revisit the past and acknowledge that experience and accept that experience and not necessarily get rid of it, not get rid of old Linda or old Nadine or, those experiences, not push them down because I feel like for 35 years, that's what I did. I was
Hmm.
just like, oh, that wasn't very comfortable. Like I didn't even know I
Yeah,
was
let's
doing
let's
it.
push that away. Let's not think about that. But
I didn't
that what you
even realize.
yeah, but even though we may not be paying attention to it, it is paying attention to us and it's still with
Yes.
us.
Yeah.
So anytime we had an icky experience, if unless we debrief it and resolve it and neutralize it, it's going to stay with us and it's going to glom onto all those other experiences that felt uncomfortable or unsafe. And suddenly you have this glob or mountain in front of you that feels like a big obstacle of fear to push through every single time. And if you want to feel comfortable when you speak anywhere, whether it's, at a party with friends or at work in a company, or if you're an entrepreneur, with getting on social media or networking, that you want to be present.
Yeah.
That's the key is how do we get ourselves comfortable, present, relaxed in the here and now. And to do that, we need to clear, not get rid of, but clear the past so that it's not a trigger.
Mm.
And like I said before, we ascribe meaning to it. So part of it is assigning new meaning to it,
Yeah.
revisiting it in a way that, so when things happen to us, oftentimes we don't have the resources to handle it in a way that it doesn't affect us. We didn't have the teacher or the parent or the mentor. We didn't think of telling them, or maybe they were the problem. That, so we coped. We came up with something that we could cope with. And then these coping mechanisms that keep us safe are the things that don't serve us later in life. So we do need to revisit them enough to change our relationship to them, enough so that we can forgive ourselves, if nobody else, forgive ourselves and surround ourselves with love and compassion and appreciation for who we've been and who we've become, so that it doesn't sit in us in the same way. We still know them. They're still our stories, but they're just that. They're just a story.
Mm.
They're not a a uh, scripture to live life by.
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of makes sense. It was just as you were talking like that whole experience where if we haven't gone through that process of like accepting and how did you say it? What were the words you used? Not healing, but
Clearing,
clearing.
neutralizing.
Clearing,
Yeah,
yeah. That we have a whole chemical reaction, don't we? So we kind of
absolutely.
have that experience, and then every time we think we have that story, that entire chemical reaction, our brain releases all of the same chemicals. So we actually feel like we're still in it.
Absolutely. That's why it's a trigger. And that's why your heart races and you
Yeah,
start sweating or you
yeah,
shake
yeah,
and you can't think straight. And that's also the reason why I think it's misguided to try to push through the fear. Number one,
yeah,
because because half of your brain is absorbed with trying to manage the fear and your feelings about having fear. So you're not just nervous, but you're nervous about being nervous. You're
yes,
nervous about it being visible to other people and you're trying to control it. So that takes away from your ability to just be paying attention to your thoughts and communicating and connecting because you're so pulled into this managing of the experience. And number two is that it doesn't get rid of the fear to push through it, as I mentioned before. And number three, it takes the joy away.
Mm,
Because as I started off with, speaking is our human design. We're supposed to have fun with it. Look at a child, they show us this is supposed to be fun.
mm, yeah. And quite
And
poignant.
and and so
Sorry.
and this is why I like speaking fear, actually, because it's uncomfortable. It asks of us and it invites us to look at what's in the way,
Yeah.
because it's not just speaking that it affects. If you go back and you clear away that bullying, if you go back and you clear how your parent took up all the airtime and you never could get a word in edgewise, they always had to be right, your thoughts were not considered. Any of these things that you are able to clear away, it's going to have this impact on your whole life, not just your speaking, but just how you be in the world.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. So interesting. Like, and I'd like to kind of just go back and give another example, or a couple of other examples so that people like may resonate. As you said, it could be speaking in front of your family. But I had an experience a few months ago where I was in a community group and they asked us to talk in the circle. You know, each of you had to say why you were there. Oh my goodness, like I get the lump in my throat, like I feel like I'm going to cry. It's intense, but
It's intense.
as you suggest, the like that is a it's a beacon. It's kind of like there's something in there, Nadine, that needs to be healed.
Yes.
You need to be
And
recognized for
and
your
like
experience.
likely Nadine, likely that is connected to the bullying,
Yeah.
because when we are afraid in that networking, and that is a very common.
Mm,
I remember, I know exactly what you're describing because that was me too.
yeah.
When we're afraid in that circle of peers, it relates to a wound in our circle of peers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
Okay.
you have another example that you wanted to share?
Oh, it was a similar situation, but like yeah, it was another kind of group situation, but it was like it was that yeah, exactly the same thing, different group, but like talking or someone asked me a question or even a one-on-one actually. If someone asked me something where I feel quite vulnerable, same thing. I just feel like I'm gonna, you know, I get the lump in my throat and I'm gonna cry. Yeah, there's a vulnerability and I guess probably not feeling safe to
Feeling
express
safe.
who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So very very close to my heart. I'm just peeking down at my notes.
Yeah. I'm thinking, Nadine, that it's, one of the nice things about hosting a podcast is you're the ones who gets to ask the questions. And
Yes,
so you're not
don't
put
have
on
to
the
talk about
spot.
me. Oh dear. All right. So let me have a look at I know. So you've kind of said some of the mistakes that individuals make in trying to deal with their fear of speaking is like pushing it down. And we've sort of said that when you do that, when you push through, when you're like, oh well, everyone feels like this, I just have to do it once. All of the things that and you said in your own experience going in front of the camera for those 75 days, but you're still producing all of this chemical reaction that's causing the same feelings, even if you are pushing through. So that's kind of like that's the big mistake that people make is just ignoring it. Would you say that's
Yes, and
one? Or there are others?
I don't blame people, because most of us, I didn't realize that there was something I could do about it.
Mm,
I didn't realize that I could live my life without it. Because when I stopped that day and I recognized that this has root causes, and then I actually had some tools to clear it away, 5 days later it was gone.
5 days.
5 days it was gone.
Wow.
That
How
was nine
much?
years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow. How much work did you have to put in, and how much consistent
So,
work do you put in for that? Like, do you have to keep going through a particular process?
I felt like, there is some circling around or
Mm,
spiraling around. But what I did was I recognized the issue with my sisters, so I did some EFT around that to
okay.
begin with. And then I thought about all these other experiences that I had where that I described, and I did some EFT, and then I remember being up in the middle of the night for several nights for a couple of hours and thinking about all the comments and all the experiences I had that made me feel uncomfortable. And I just said, I forgive you. I'll give you an example with my mother. I forgive you, Mom, for not knowing how to parent better. I forgive you for not realizing the danger you put me in. I forgive you for not knowing how to handle my sisters who were naughty. And I would forgive my sisters and I'd say why. And then I did a lot of self-forgiveness. As I said, I just kind of like lay there at night and did a review of my earlier experiences. It doesn't even have to be your early experiences. There are experiences we have as adults also, relationships, workplaces where that people may be unkind or bullying or, microaggressions and all kinds of things. So there's plenty of material to clear up. I would say before the pandemic, I did lead my first retreat. And we had 3.5 days. And I'd say half the people on the retreat by the end of those 3.5 days were over their fear of speaking. And the other half, it took another session and maybe some evidence to show them that they were over it. Now, I think if I was to do the retreat again, which I would love to do because it was a lot of fun, I would say 5 days or 4.5 days. And I know that people would come out the other side being a different person.
That's very,
But because I haven't done it in that kind of format, it takes about, like in my group program, it takes about 10 weeks.
mhm.
And when I work privately, it's anywhere, oh gosh, it really depends on where someone is and what their experiences is. But I've worked with people for 2 or 3 sessions and it's gone.
Wow.
Those are usually people who are already speaking.
Mm, yeah.
So and they're good at speaking, but they suffer silently inside. And then I think on average between 9 and 12. And then occasionally it can be longer. It just depends on what someone's experiences are and how willing they are and how easy it is or how sticky their experiences are.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, but still
that's
that's not a lot of
that's
time.
not a
When you
lot of
think
time.
about decades, it's like a couple of months or 2 or 3 months is it's magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, it's not that it feels magical, but it isn't magic. It's a process that we
Mm,
follow.
yeah.
And it starts with revealing and healing, and it also continues to into transforming how we talk to ourselves because we have allowed an inner voice to persist that, as you know, can be very harsh, very unkind, and yet we don't even realize it's there because it sounds so familiar
Mm,
until you say things out loud. Like I had a client, actually, he was really unusual. He we couldn't find any traumatic experiences from his past at all, at all. And it turned out he was at the top of his class, valedictorian, but he was suffering. He was a COO of a tech startup, and every time he had to speak at a meeting, same symptoms. And I said to him, Sumit, not his real name, but I use it in my storytelling. What do you tell yourself as before it's your turn to speak? It sounded a little bit like, you're not a very good speaker. Look at your partner. He's a natural, so much better than you. You're dull and boring. You messed up. You're rambling. Stop it. People are going to see you're nervous. You're going to lose your reputation. And it's like, oh my God. Like in his head, he didn't feel how harsh that was. But when he said it out, when he told me, and I said it back to him like this, he went, okay, I get it. It's like he had an inner bully ready to pounce and berate him on every perceived imperfection. And when you have been a really good student, an A student, it's so easy to conflate your worthiness with being perfect
Mm,
and never making mistakes. This is our school's trauma. We feel like mistakes are bad. So if he self-evaluated that, oh, that was only a 96, that's a failure. Failure. Because
yeah,
he is the person that always was perfect. So if you don't feel safe inside yourself, you're not going to feel safe in front of others. So we really do need to, I don't like to say quiet or shut down that voice. I think it's a wounded voice. I think it wants to learn how to communicate better, and we can help it be more encouraging, supportive, loving, uplifting, and then we feel so much better.
yeah. It's that acknowledgement, isn't it? I know you're there, I
Yeah.
can hear you, I understand
Yeah.
why you're there, that kind of thing, rather than,
Yeah, and also like what is it that you're concerned about? I mean, like I like to ask it. I do this in a process in my Comfy on Camera module where we learn to watch ourselves on video without cringing. And the first thing we do is we watch ourselves and we let ourselves cringe and we write down all the things we dislike, all the things we hate. And it's so easy to make a long list. And then, well, we go through a process. There's some things we can change and some things we can't. So the things that we can't change, there's a process for acceptance. The things we can change, it's like, okay, you don't like that I lift my chin up when I speak. What do you suggest?
yeah,
And then you let it come up with suggestions and you go, that's okay, I'll try, you know, sitting up straight. What else do you recommend? And then it said, well, maybe you can like video record yourself and just with just that as your attention. Sounds good. What else? And in this way, we teach that voice to be, it's discerning,
mm,
but it also has ideas. It has solutions.
yeah, great. Love that. All right, checking my notes again. Okay, so you kind of that's kind of covered like healing rather than quieting the inner critical voice. Okay, so imposter syndrome is really the same under the same umbrella, or is imposter
I
syndrome a
think
little bit
so.
different?
I do feel like it's the same. I feel like there if we feel like a fraud, there's a reason for it.
Mm,
The reasons maybe are usually overlapping with the same reasons why we might feel afraid to speak. So, for instance, if you had a parent whom you could never please, no matter how many awards you got, how many good grades, they still were never satisfied, you're going to feel like a fraud. You're going to feel like you can never get enough credentials to make you feel like you deserve to be where you are.
okay.
Or it could be that you had an experience where you got a leg up with something that somebody put you down for. For instance, I had one client who was part of a gifted children's program. And when she kind of tested in for it, she didn't get in. But her father was part of the school board and he
Uh,
got her in. And then some boy on the way to the gifted class said to her, "You're not supposed to be here. You're
mm,
only here because your dad is on the school board." So the parents or somebody were gossiping. And she still, even though she works for a tech company that everyone has heard of, it's a household name. She's a senior HR in it. And she still felt like she didn't belong there because of this impacting experience. One comment can have a long lasting impact for better or for worse. And this accounts for imposter syndrome. I hear it from people who go through affirmative action and then they have people saying, you don't really belong here. You only got here because of that special programming,
okay.
right?
Yeah. And I feel like so much of this stuff runs so deep that
Yes.
you don't even know that it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What was your Oh, you kind of told us about your own personal experience. What were you
Mhm.
doing for when you were, 10 years ago when you started to create this process? What was your work? What kind of situations were you in where you um,
I had come from organic farming,
okay.
and that was something that I went into when I ceased. So all I wanted to do when I was growing up was dance.
Uh-huh.
And when I was 18, I was introduced to dance therapy, which it completely changed my life. And that's all I wanted to do was help people kind of build their self personhood through movement. And my father always said, "You'll never succeed. You'll never make a living doing that. No one's going to be interested in it. I'm not interested in it." And again, impacting past experience. So I tried to prove myself to him for a long time. And after he passed away, I thought, why? Who am I trying to prove to now? This isn't working. He's right. I don't know how to make this work as a business. And I think I was ahead of my time, actually, looking back. So I didn't know what to do. I then had a child. I was performing all this time. I was performing with a women's world music group. For 40 years, I performed with them, but that was kind of like a side gig. It wasn't my big work, but it was also very foundational. I was learning music from all over the world, different languages. It was a vehicle for me to dance because, if I was a dancer in a dance company, I'd just be a body. But in a music group, when one of the musicians steps forward and dances, then it's like, wow. So I felt like it was an amazing vehicle for me to be seen in some way and recognized and feel significant. It was very quite nice. So that was going on for up until the pandemic, actually. And then I did get into organic farming, and I was selling vegetables to local restaurants. And then one day I thought, I've always had a big dream to make a big impact, and here I am hiding behind the kale. What's
Oh.
that about? What's that about? And I thought if I get to the end of my life and I haven't, like tried to do something that was bigger, I think I'm going to feel regret. So that's when I came into the online space. I took a program for coaching and I thought I would help. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to specialize in, but I was thinking I'll help people overcome stress.
Yeah.
And so that's what was so funny about being on Periscope because here I was totally stressed out on Periscope, telling people how to not be stressed. So yeah, that was my thing. But what I do want to say about the background in dance and dance therapy, and I mentioned the master's degree in expressive arts therapy, which was mostly in movement studies. I I have gained through all those experiences and on stage a certain practice of presence
Mm.
that once I got over my fear, I was free to feel present. But not everybody has that same background as me. So what I realized that there was actually a third part to going from a place of dread to delight in the limelight, which is to repattern our habits of expressing ourselves. And that's the way we breathe, the way we use our voice, the way we use our gestures and our body and our energy. And that when we've been living life constricted and inhibited, that's not really our real self. And we may not know what our real self looks like until we start experimenting and exploring and playing around with how we use our voice and using our voice in different ways and using our bodies in different ways and loosening up and doing things that are uncharacteristic to see how do they feel. Scott, we need to try things on and experience new ways. And then all of a sudden, we have a much larger palette to choose from when we express ourselves. And it becomes more playful and more fun, more varied and interesting and satisfying.
Yeah. So you so you weren't really planning to do what you're doing now.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, it was, I mean, I could, in fact, it's funny. When I did come onto the online space uh, as a coach, and I was talking to the only person I knew who was also an entrepreneur, and she said, what do you want to specialize in? And I said, I think I want to talk about like everyday bliss, strategies for everyday bliss. And she says, bliss is nice, but when I see you on stage, I think I love Linda's stage presence. I want some of that. Maybe you can teach people how to have some of that. And I said to her, what do you mean? How to stand on stage and smile? Because I couldn't talk on stage. I hated having to introduce a song.
Okay.
So when she talked about presence, it was like my presence as I moved, or my presence as I sang, and how I, you know, expressed my facial or body or just the energy. But I couldn't speak. So when she said that to me, I thought that's ridiculous. I mean, that's not enough. How am I going to sell that? However, now I do teach that, but it's just a piece of it. Because, after somebody is free of their stuff, their mind stuff, the past stuff, then they do want to know, how do I drop into my body? How do I feel grounded and calm? How do I like take in attention from the audience and let it just move through me and even fill me up, which is so different than terrify me. It's like, how do we switch out into this like new way of experiencing ourselves? Yeah, so in fact, I should tell her, Eliza, I'm doing what you told me to do now.
But you're probably giving people a little bit of bliss in their everyday lives as well.
Well, I
Because
hope
self-expression is
so.
like probably
Yes.
something for many of us we've lost or haven't felt confident in
Yes.
even it being a thing. Yeah.
Yes. And that's why I named my book Delight in the Limelight, because I do want people to feel delighted, delighted to open their mouth, to get to express themselves, to make sounds. I mean, it's magical. And because you have children who are not long out of that age
Yeah.
where it was magical to them. And you felt how magical it was to listen to them. And it can still be that way. It can still be that way even at 60, at 50, at 70.
Amazing. Okay. Let me have a look at the notes again. Okay. Let's have okay, the similarities and differences. So let's talk about people when they're doing some kind of presentation. So we've got the similarities and differences, getting comfortable on camera or like in front of a crowd. So I'm thinking, because again, like for me, I guess speaking on social media is in front of the camera, right? And a
Right.
lot of people are doing that, whether it's for work or whether it's just because they want to talk about something that they've experienced or, share anything. And then in front of a crowd, it doesn't necessarily have to be work related, right? It could be a speech at a wedding,
Yes. Or a eulogy.
a eulogy.
Or you could be at a
Exactly.
party and someone says, "Oh, tell these people about that time that you
Yes.
jumped off a cliff."
Yeah. Yeah. I made it.
Yes, and survived.
So, what are the differences? What are some of the differences that people might experience with those two things? I guess there's practice in it with a camera if you're not recording it live, but then,
There are differences. I feel, we know it's interesting that some people are totally comfortable speaking to people in front of them and feel very weirded out on the camera.
oh,
And some people are really comfortable on a camera and feel very uncomfortable in person. And some people everywhere it's uncomfortable. Or actually, I had one client who was comfortable in both places, but uncomfortable in what you described, the go around.
ah,
He had some heavy trauma from school around that. So the biggest difference is your attention. So when you are on camera, you learn to speak to just one person.
Mm.
And it's easy to think about one person because you've got the camera in just one spot. And that's kind of amazing about this technology is because when I look at the camera, when I'm looking in it, the person who is looking at me feels like I'm looking at them,
Mm.
which is really different than when you're with more than one person and whoever you're not looking at really knows that you're not looking at them. And so there is this kind of strategy and skill of how do you include a room full or a table full of people in your speaking, and that is a level or another layer that we need to put onto our presence so that you're looking off to the right and you're looking center and then you look to the left and you just kind of like you are imagining one person, but it's like that person and then this person and then that person. So that is a level of complexity that you don't have when you're on camera.
Okay. So that's
The other
kind of like almost getting into the nuts and bolts of public speaking,
exactly. So there are more there
rather than that process of uncovering the the problem with or the
yes.
difficulties.
Yes. So all the stuff that we already talked about, the stuff
Mm.
and clearing the stuff, that's the same for both.
Uh-huh.
But when you're talking about the differences of camera or being on person, that's going to be like a different skill level.
Mm. Yeah.
And the other thing is that when you're with people, you see their expressions and you often make interpretations about their expressions. Whereas if you're, let's say, making a video, you don't see anybody. And
Yeah.
so that's not going to impact you. Some people say that makes it hard. That makes it so hard. I can't see their expressions. I don't know what they're thinking. But for other people, it's like, this is a freedom because I don't have to interpret somebody looking like they don't like it. I mean, I remember even as a performer with my music group, we used to talk about this that you look at in the audience and some people look like they weren't happy. But it's just their resting face.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just their resting face. And then maybe afterwards they would jump up and they'd say, "Oh my God, that was amazing." But you had no idea. And if you have no idea and you're making interpretations and you see someone who's not smiling, you go, "Uh-oh."
And the
And all of a
story
sudden
starts
you're
running.
all the thoughts start running, or that's enough to distract you from what you're doing, from the song or from what you're saying. So it's really, really important as when you're speaking in person to it's almost like a discipline to not allow your sense of interpretation and making meaning from it to distract you. It's like when you're on camera, you imagine the best of the person who's listening to you. You imagine that they're there because they want to hear from you. And it's probably true because why are they going to waste their time listening to something that they're not interested in? When you have people who are in front of you, you you know they're in the seat. They're kind of like quote unquote stuck in the seat. So it's not like they can just go away if they're not interested in listening to you. I mean, it depends. Like maybe you're a street performer and that's different. But if you, let's say you're in a room, no, people aren't generally going to stand up and leave.
Mm.
Well, I don't know. I guess like at a conference they could, but generally people feel compelled if they're there to kind of give you their attention. So you really do need to discipline yourself to stay focused in that same way that you would be on camera, assume the best, know that what you have to say may not speak to the whole audience. In fact, when I was doing speaker training, I've done a lot of speaker training programs. It would be a different percentage each time, but it was always there's going to be some percentage in the audience who really gets what you're talking about, really resonates. There's going to be another amount of people who they're a little skeptical, but they're interested, very interested. You know, I want to hear more. Tell me more. And then there are going to be some people who just don't get it, don't like it. They have a different perspective. And we have to allow ourselves that to allow other people to have their own relationship to whatever it is that we're saying and to us. Just like we're not going to like everything that we hear, we're not going to like everyone we meet. We have to allow not everyone to like us. And
Yeah.
when we accept that and we know that, then it frees us up that if we see someone who's not smiling, it's like, that's okay. That's okay. But I do recommend that if there are people who look more engaged, look at those people instead. I mean, that's what I did. That's what we did, in our music group. We look at the people who had their open faces. And those are the people we sang to. And then we just ignored those other people.
Cool. That's a good comparison. Makes complete sense. Okay. Tell us a little bit about how to handle mistakes, because I think that it can be something that a lot of people, well, hopefully not after they've read your book or worked with you, but the fear of making a mistake is like the overarching theme of the whole experience. Like, what if I go wrong?
Yes.
So, what can we do
Yeah.
with that?
I always sigh when I think about this because we really have a difficult time getting through our educational system without a trauma around
Mm,
mistakes.
yes.
Because if you think about it, we get the best grades for making the fewest mistakes. So mistakes are the bad guy. And we're taught to be afraid of them.
Mm,
Imagine how different it would be if we had a school system that encouraged experimentation and that making mistakes was no big deal.
yeah.
And that's not how we were graded. We were graded, I don't know, maybe we weren't graded. Maybe we were just, encouraged. But, we have this standardization and for some reason, it's a way of, making a hierarchy of people. So that's number one. So if you're afraid of making mistakes, it makes total sense that you do. But in the real world, it's not relevant. Unless, of course, you're a surgeon or an accountant, you want to try to be perfect. There's nothing wrong with wanting to polish off something, but it's just not necessary. And not only is it not necessary, perfection makes us less relatable.
Yeah.
We are human, we're made to make mistakes. I mean, that's how we learn, right? And that's, I think, what's so confusing. We're told, oh, everyone learns from mistakes, but don't make mistakes. So we have this like double-edged sword. I remember my father, when I was 35, I talked with my father because I was paralyzed by my fear of mistakes. And I said, Dad, what do you think of mistakes? He said, everyone makes mistakes. And I started to like release all this tension. And then he said, but don't make it twice. Then you're stupid. And I thought, okay, now I
Okay.
know why I'm afraid of making mistakes because I know I make mistakes more than twice. Definitely, definitely. Okay. So here's the key: learn to handle mistakes with poise. I'll give you some examples. If you stumble over your words, just move on. Or you bring a little humor to it. And you can, just like earlier in this episode, I stumbled over my words and I just repeated it slowly, enunciated it, and I moved on. Sometimes, like I was making a video today and I was just introducing myself. Hi, I'm Linda Ugelow, a speaking confidence coach, and blah, blah. And I just started going blah, 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 blah. And then I burst out in laughter. And I'm actually keeping it as a blooper reel because I just thought it was kind of funny. Like, I can't even introduce myself. And here I am, a speaking confidence coach. So, but the point is, we can be self deprecating and people enjoy that. I mean, who doesn't like a blooper reel? They're fun. So, if you stumble, make a mistake, that's not a terrible thing. Roll with it, enjoy it, or just move on. Number two, let's say you've organized something to present, and you realize you skipped over a section. First of all, nobody knows that you skipped over a section. So the easiest thing is to just forget it, move on. However, you may feel like, "Oh, but I really feel like this is an important piece." Then stick it back in when it feels like it works. Or you can say, hold it there. Let's circle back to this first. Just a short two little sentences. And if you have that in your back pocket, you'll never worry about skipping over a section. Or let's say you get distracted and you lose your place and you don't remember what you're talking about. Well, you could either, I was taught, well, you can say what you just said again. You can repeat what you said again and it'll joggle your mind. But truthfully, I like to say, I can't remember what I was just saying. What was I just saying? Now, you can't do that online. Let's say if you're giving a webinar so easily. But in life, you can do that. And that's audience interaction. People get to say, oh, you were saying this. And they get to supply that information and they like that. And it's fun. Oh, yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah.
What if you don't know the answer to something in a Q&A? Well, there's nothing wrong with not knowing an answer in today's age when we've got Google and now Chat GPT. I don't know the answer to that. I'll look it up and get back to you. Or you can say, I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you this.
Mm.
Or you can say, I don't know the answer, but I'm sure maybe there's someone else here who does. And then you switch into being a facilitator, which also shows your skills and credibility.
Yeah.
So these are the point of all this is that mistakes don't have to be the boogeyman. Mistakes can be an opportunity to show your humanity and allow people to relate to you. I remember I once gave a talk and I put a slide in at the very last minute that morning. And when I got to it, I had no idea why I put it there. And I said so. I said, I just put the slide here this morning. I have no idea why I put it there, but I know it was important. So just give me a minute and maybe it will come. And I was standing there going, oh God, should I just move on? Which would have been fine. I could have done that.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden it came to me and I said, oh yes, if you haven't prepared, that can also cause speaking anxiety. And everybody burst out laughing. And then I realized how ironic it was.
And probably sounded like it was well rehearsed as well.
Exactly. And someone said, you should keep that in. You should keep that in there. The president, it was a Rotary Club, or no, yeah, I think it was a Rotary Club. The president came up to me and said, I loved that moment. That was my favorite moment. And then she hired me as her coach. So that is to say, your mistakes make you relatable.
Yeah.
And it can also make you money.
Ah, very good. Fabulous. You've given us so many amazing insights and yeah, I love it. I'm conscious we've just reached our hour, and I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about how we can get hold of your book, work with you, find out more about what you're doing. I know that your Instagram page is great and like full of really helpful material. So
Yeah, I
you
would
want
say
to?
I'm more active on TikTok.
Okay.
Everywhere it's Linda Ugelow, Ugelow.
Yep.
My book, here I go. Delight in the Limelight is on Amazon or anywhere else. You can also order it from your library or your favorite local bookstore. And it's in all forms, so you can get it on Kindle or audio or paperback. And then if you want to be on my email list, I have a speaker preparation checklist of practices and warm-ups you can do to help you feel grounded, relaxed, and energized and focused. So you can get that at lindaugelow.com, UGELOW.com/rituals.
Amazing. Did you want to add anything else? Or
There's
I
one
don't know whether I
last
interrupted
thing.
you there.
There's one last thing I would love to say is Think about the places that you already love to speak, the people who you already love to speak with, and allow yourself to see how you can enjoy yourself just 2% even more. And
Yeah,
what that
lovely.
might be like, how can I make this even more fun to talk to these people who I already enjoy speaking with?
Lovely. Great. I can't recommend this book enough. As I said right at the beginning, and I've said a couple of times throughout this hour, like we don't necessarily need to be speaking in front of massive crowds if we just want to have confidence in expressing ourselves in our everyday lives with the people that we spend time with, as you said, and improving that experience. There is absolutely so much value in going in and doing the healing process, even if you're not a speaker. But as you've shared with us, it took until you were 60. You're looking
Yes,
amazing, and you attribute part of that. I'm sure you have a wonderful lifestyle as well, but you attribute that kind of uh, to your confidence and that healing process that you've been through as well on your speaking journey. So, yeah, I can't
absolutely.
recommend this book enough. And thank you so much for joining us. I've really loved having you here, and it's given me inspiration to improve my speaking skills as well, which would
That's
probably be a
wonderful.
good thing considering I have a podcast.
Yes, yes. Well, it's a learning journey for all
Yeah,
of us.
yeah.
And it's not like you get to one place and it stops. It's
Mm.
always evolving, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate your time, Linda, and I wish you all the best. We're going to put your details in the guest directory so people can find all of the links to your TikTok, Instagram, your book, your website, all of the things. And yeah, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadine.